Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening, panel. I listened to Professor Carl Paris, that program called Commentary, back in 1986. And since I heard him, I don't think anything else happened. He simply said, he started off saying, if everybody had blonde hair and blue eyes, nothing was wrong with the Westminster style system. He said, it's time to flush that. He never gave his system a name, but I am the one who gave it this name. I call it a community state. Okay? What he said, let each community form committees, and the committees will appoint their representatives to the councils. The councils in turn will appoint their representatives to the executive council. And a presidential election, the president will appoint a commission to select the ministers, and this will just be a man and a job to like near you. Right? He said all independent centers. He said every county, people will corporate shopping mall, and the council, they will have a hall where the council will meet, and a couple of a cultural center. Every quarterly, you will have a meeting chaired by a representative on the executive council. Members of the communities submit their recommendations about 3 to 4 meetings and so on, so the council will reply. Now, as one of, everybody see the panel was saying, how do you get, we're in a situation here, but how do we get from here to there? Right? First begin, you know, we have a society that is not really interested in any constitutional reform. Generally, if they're happy the way it is, if they could eat a food, as they say, they're looking to make no changes. If they could drive the car 100 miles an hour through Woodbook, right, and nobody don't tell them anything about it, but they'll continue with it. So I'm saying that there's no easy way. I have tried. I have to shut that trend. If I'm turning right in the night, I turn off my headlight and I put on the indicator. So no my headlight is on nobody eye. I tried for years, I've been doing it. Nobody ever followed me. Right? No one. But then, so I'm saying, why are the police? I said, what is going on? one I tried. So I'm saying that how do you move? Because the level of consciousness of the average person, he's not interested in that. He could, you know, looking at a skirt, right? We're looking at something to buy, some come up that I don't want, whatever it is. So I don't know, gentlemen, I just said this in closing, I was saying, myself and some friends, we decided we will start our own party. We call it community party.
Okay.
But it's a big job.
Thank you very much. I think David wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to engage Dr. Gonzalez in some of what you were saying. The manifesto, of course, was not just the COP input. I want to make that point. Young Atkins Vidal here from NSG and Rosa David here, who's also here, both young people. We also contributed immensely to the ideas. And what we took to it were the positions that came out of the Constitutional Reform Forum, which was the work that we've been doing around constitutional reform before we had NSG. So we brought those ideas to the table, and of course, not all that we wanted got in, which is why basically there just were 4 elements of reform committed to: right of recall, term limits, referendum, and fixed date for elections, of which 2 got into this constitutional amendment bill, albeit one of them, the one doing the right of recall, in a very distorted way, which will never work, because you will never get 2/3 of the registered voters in any constituency voting to recall someone. You don't get anybody, you don't get 2/3 voting in total in elections in any case. You get them to vote to recall or something happen. So it is therefore done in a way that you could say, manifesto, we did it, tick, right? But it is not done in a way to make it real. So it's illusion. And the issue of runoff, because the COP has a position on PR, the UNC is for PR, and runoff is the antithesis of PR. It's the opposite of PR. But runoff was politically expedient to deal with a third-party threat in 2014-15 general elections because of what happened in local government elections, because of what happened in St. Joseph, and so on. And so they had to find a way constitutionally, legally, but not necessarily legitimately, to reinforce the culture that a third party or third force can't win an election given the bipolar state of the politics. So part of the challenge that we have in terms of change is for, and I think, Peter, you're right, that there is a growing third force in that sense. But how is that third force now going to cohere and coalesce in such a way? And the issue, therefore, of what captures the imagination of that third force that wants real change, what are the issues that you put on the agenda? Constitutional reform, yes, but it can't be non-abstracted things because that doesn't excite people's imagination. But certainly about changing the bipolar system is something that has to be addressed. And what we one could say we're not successful, but it's a process. It's like water dropping on concrete. And C.L.R. James spoke about that when you see, and you wrote that in the introduction to Black Jacobins, you see the huge explosion when massive change is about to take place or is taking place. And you look at that, but that didn't happen just so. That happened because of long years of patient, dedicated work of changing people's minds and building and mobilizing and so on, which ultimately will get to a critical mass which brings about that change. And one of the things we're doing in that regard, just taking an advertisement, is on the 23rd of this month, from 6 to 10. Let's go outside President's house, let's walk around the savannah with a candlelight, and to say that we do want to have a new republic, because the old republic, the first republic, is not working for us.
Anybody with any sort, if that is how you feel it should go, of how we get people, get the society to move from where it is. David spoke in his opening statement about a revolution of the mind. I thought he was going to say a revolution of something else, but he said a revolution of the mind. Is there any way, any thought in anybody's mind here of how we move from where we are, if the thought is that we should? Yes, sir.
Just very briefly. And Dr. Ragoonath made a reference to it. It has to begin with a recognition that a lot of what is being spoken about is not known by the wider population. And so it has to begin with a sensitization and an education of the broader population on what the Constitution, in fact, is saying, or not saying. So it has to be done on multiple fronts. Among those who are in the know, we need to expand the knowledge base to understand to bring some level of understanding of what are the implications of what is before us from a historical context and where we move from there. But we also need to recognize that there's a vast cross-section of this country that has no idea what the Constitution says, what it means. And so when we speak of these things, it is not important to them because they just don't know about it. So part of it has to involve some strategy of sensitization of your population as to what this is, what is the basis upon which all of this is standing. And the institutions, educational institutions like what we're doing here, and even at the age groups that are coming up, they need to be part of that process that David is speaking to. And it has to be a concerted effort that is geared towards moving it. And it's not about necessarily causing the explosion. It is about expanding the knowledge base so that you are better informed as a population, and it's about moving towards a level of development that is sustainable. That's the ultimate goal here. But it requires that it be rooted in a process that is structured and involves the key institutions in a manner that is moving forward.
You know, again, that is something that has been said here, and I'm wondering, how come we've got a society like Trinidad and Tobago that has been in many ways a revolutionary society going back 100 years. 100 years ago, they burned down the Red House when people felt that they had no opportunity to say how their taxes made a difference. How have we got to where we are, 1987, 1970, and there is this big, I don't know, ignorance in the society. Roger again said it so. What kind of society have we built that we have this thick layer of ignorance in the society, if what you all are saying is correct? Somebody tell me.
Well, part of the reason, again, I come back to the bipolar nature of the society. Whatever the political leaders said, and if you fall on whichever side, you follow them blindly. And they are not, the political parties are not doing the political education that a political party should do. MSJ probably is, and I'll go, maybe I should go back. MJAC and probably MSJ were probably the two parties that attempted real political education. Even the COP, I would challenge them as to whether they were pursuing real political education. I'll give you a simple example. Dr. Gonzalez talked about PR, and I know there are some support for PR. What makes PR better than first past the post? Is there anything except the fact that the amount of people who voted, or every vote will count? Except for that fact, every vote will count. Let me give you the opposite to that. And the opposite to that is simply this. When you have a PR system and a government is elected, all the votes have been counted, a government has been elected, what happens to the opposition? They are in the same position that the opposition today under first past the post is in. They have nothing. And they have to wait and go begging cap in hand and hoping that the government will give them the scraps from the table.
But they may get more seats. Isn't that of significance? They may get more seats under the PR system.
They may get more seats, but
isn't that sufficient?
Sufficient? And if you get 1917, then what happened? Or 2120?
We don't have to discuss reform of PR because
Yeah.
we can go back to voting with the mixed system.
Right.
And so on. I was just raising it to
Right.
say that there seems to me to be a kind of emerging consensus that some form of PR is necessary in the society.
Right.
We could decide later on what kind is it. But it seems to me that you've seen all the discussion going on right now. When you read all the articles in the press, everybody says, but proportional representation is the better way to go than to go to runoff. They're all saying that in the media.
I hear you.
So that, but the form of it, I agree with you. I would like to see a Guyana system. Yeah, I prefer to see something, of a more mixed type, where you have both some first past the post plus the system. But all I'm saying is that I think that there is a voice outside there. There is some kind of emerging consensus on some form of PR. It's the exact form, I do not know. But it's to get the political parties in the House to really take it up seriously and discuss it seriously and push it through. How do we get that? That's the question I was asking.
Moderator, can I ask one other question?
Microphone, please. Oh, you have one. Sorry.
In the same way as we recognized just now, the critical question is what constitutes a constitution. What is the view of the panel in terms of the question? Is it also important who leads the process? Who is most appropriate? Is it possible at all that anybody, or could be defined who is most appropriate to lead this process?
Yeah. I think in the first instance, it cannot be anybody associated with the government. I think it has to be independent. The process of carrying on the process of constitutional reform, it has to be an independent body doing that. Always also felt that because of Minister Ramada's situation with the COP, and they were talking in a certain light, that even though he was a minister of government, he would have been sensitive to letting the voice of the people come out and so on. He was not. So let's just get it, I would say, set up under Parliament, as far as it's possible in our very small society. Get some independent set of people, give them resources, let that body last for some time, in the first instance about 3 years or so, with regular feedback to Parliament, somebody mentioned the other day that the present report was not even laid in Parliament. I mean, that is outrageous. You know, and let that body, coming back to what has been saying all the time, and I know this is a difficult thing, but we need a body that appears to have some legitimacy to lead the political education. And there is serious, I agree with what everybody's been saying. There is a serious need for real political education, not tied to any one of the major parties in this bipolar society. Could we reach a point of maturity where we have either the voices outside, enough voices outside, that makes that kind of demand of our government and parliament, or a parliament that recognizes that having this independent body is the way to go?
Somebody wants a microphone. Okay, you first and then microphone down here, please.
Good night, everyone. My name is Gerald Strawn. I'm a member of the OWTU. I'm kind of responding to the moderator's comments about the, for want of a better word, the apathy in the society. I believe if we go back to the days of the 1930s with the labor movement and the role of the trade unions and all of that, I think people came together in a common good because there were a number of issues where people were denied basic rights, people were being exploited. The races came together because they had a common adversary, and that the direct pocket, the very existence of people affected, the issue with the Black Power, the 1970s and so on, again, we had that challenge. I think the oil money has brought a certain level of apathy in the society, where there's a level of false comfort. People are not prepared to come out in a group to protest. You may find people rising up against certain things, and when you look, you see about 10 people. So that I believe it has to be something very major that will affect and directly hurt people where it hurts, in terms of their pocket, that would cause a mass movement of people. I believe that right now I feel that people are very comfortable, and then we also have the challenge of corruption, the high level of corruption. But I believe the impetus back then was something that directly affected how people live. The hours of work, all those things affect you as an individual personally. So you found that people came together and really struggled. Some people sacrificed a lot. So I think until people are directly affected in a major way, we will continue to have this.
Okay. So the question is for people who are to be involved in mobilizing in the present time, given that the circumstances are very different, given that there's a lot of people with some comfort, how do you find the mechanisms or reach where people are to mobilize them from where they are? So thanks for that contribution. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Ozzy Warwick of the OWTU. It's really a very quick question to the panel. In light of all that we've been hearing, when you hear people power, in a way you're talking revolution and revolutionary change. So my simple question to all of the panelists, and I'm very interested to hear, is there a real potential for revolutionary change to fundamentally transform the relations of power in Trinidad and Tobago, and where does that potential lie?
But Ozzy, let me ask you a question. What do you mean? Hold on. It's really a clarification of your question. What do you mean by revolutionary change?
But I think it was mentioned earlier by Comrade Abdulah, which is the changing of the relations of economic and political power.
Okay, so that's the revolutionary change you're calling for. All right. Yes, panelists.